In today's lecture, we're going to explore the topic of ukiyo-e, meaning pictures of the floating world. It is a genre of Japanese art that flourished from the 17th to the 19th centuries. It primarily depicted scenes from the vibrant urban life of Edo, which is modern-day Tokyo. Um, and this particular genre of art includes topics like kabuki theater actors, courtesans, sumo wrestlers, landscapes, and everyday activities of the townspeople. And ukiyo-e was developed during the Edo period, which is a time of relative peace and economic prosperity in Japan, which allows the merchant class, the middle class, to become patron of the arts. So the most important feature of ukiyo-e is it is not a so-called elite form of art. It belongs to the mainstream. It is a very early form of popular culture in Edo, Japan. So for today's lecture, I will mainly talk about these three aspects. Historical setting, I will discuss the emergence of ukiyo-e during the Edo period in Japan, focusing on the social and political climate of the Tokugawa shogunate, which brought peace and stability but imposed strict social hierarchies. However, the abolitionist policies influenced Japanese art forms by reducing Western influence while cultivating a unique Japanese identity. In the meanwhile, the growth of an urban consumer culture and society created a demand for affordable art, leading to the development of ukiyo-e as a popular art form for the masses. I will also cover the major genres within ukiyo-e, such as bijinga, which is pictures of beautiful women, yakusha-e, actor prints, fukei-ga, landscapes, shunga, erotic art, and musha-e, the warrior prints. And I will explain how these genres, these different genres, reflect different aspects of the Edo period's culture and interests. By the end of the lecture, I will talk a little bit about the influence of ukiyo-e on the development of Western art by introducing the term Japonism. So the Japonism means the influence of Japanese art, culture, and aesthetics on Western art, particularly in Europe, beginning in the mid 19th century. And this movement emerged after Japan opened its borders to the West in 1854, following over 200 years of isolation. The influx of Japanese goods, particularly ukiyo-e prints, ceramics, textiles, and other decorative arts, had a profound impact on European artists and designers. Starting from the late 17th century, the cultural center of Japan gradually shifted from the ancient Kyoto to Edo, the seat of the shogunate, and the characteristics of Japanese art evolved from a preference for stylized decorative designs to depictions of everyday life with common people as the subjects. It was against this cultural background that ukiyo-e emerged, and ukiyo-e can be interpreted as paintings of the floating world, focusing on secular life. In contrast to the concept of transcendence, it metaphorically suggests engaging with the pleasures of the world, emphasizing the transient nature of everyday life, like clouds passing before the eyes. Almost all ukiyo-e artists paid close attention to and responded to the popular trends of their time, while constantly innovating in their techniques. And there are two types of ukiyo-e, hand-painted and woodblock prints. However, when we speak of ukiyo-e today, we generally refer to the latter, the woodblock prints. And the primary achievements of ukiyo-e and its significance in art history also stem from the form of woodblock prints. So this lecture focuses primarily on woodblock prints. As a reflection of the spirit of the age, various fascinating genre painting emerged, representing a new form of painting nurtured by the emerging modern civic society. Genre painting flourished from the Muromachi period to the early Edo period, and in Japanese art history, the works from this period are collectively referred to as early modern genre paintings, with Kyoto at its center. So during the late Muromachi period to the Momoyama period, Japanese society was caught in the turbulent mix of wars and brief periods of peace. And after the Onion War, Kyoto was in ruins and it had long lost its former glory and authority. It wasn't the Muromachi shogunate that played a decisive role in the recovery efforts, but rather the emerging merchant class, which had been fostered by economic activities. So, this new citizen class rejected the elusive hope of the afterlife in a Buddhist sense and embraced a worldview that affirmed the pleasure of the present life. However, economic development did not equate to political stability. The political status of the samurai generals remained weak, and opposing factions that held real power had not given up their struggle for control. So at the same time, the power of regional feudal lords continued to expand, and warfare had not yet completely subsided. So the superficial and localized prosperity, combined with this constant instability of the nation, of the country, had a profound psychological impact on the common people in Japan. The belief in the fleeting nature of life and the impermanence of worldly affairs spread widely among people, giving rise to this floating world mentality, while enjoying life in the moment became a very popular attitude. So there's a poem in the Kabuki Soshi and Maki, which appeared around 1630. It expresses this sentiment. So here's a quote of the poem. The floating world is but a fleeting dream, so why take things so seriously? Instead, turn the beautiful moments before you into eternal memories. End quote. So this poem reflects the prevailing mindset of the time, which had endured for over a century. It was against this spiritual backdrop that genre paintings arouse, primarily depicting scenes of citizens, um, their entertainment and festivals. Among them, there is really well-known theme or topic, which is the Lakuchu Lakugai painting, usually painted on like a folding screen. So it is translated in English as Views of Kyoto and its environs. And the Lakuchu Lakugai painting usually portrays scenes of Kyoto's cityscape, everyday life, festivals, and leisure activities. So it is usually described as a treasure box shining like a gem in the darkness of war, and it added a brilliant touch to the floating world, which paves the way for the later emergence of Ukiyo-e. So, as a popular theme, Rakuchu Rakugai depicts the overall appearance of both Kyoto's urban area and its outskirts. From the early 16th century to the mid 17th century, various styles of this painting were produced, and over 70 examples have been preserved to this day. Although created by different artists over different periods, they generally follow a very similar compositional structure. The top third of the painting shows the countryside, while the lower two-thirds depicts the city. The artists skillfully combined the main attractions of both the city and its surroundings. And the artwork not only provides a comprehensive reflection of Kyoto's cityscape at the time, but more importantly, it embodies the energy of the emerging urban citizen class. And visually speaking, there is the use, like, I wouldn't call it like overly used, but there is like a large amount of shimmering gold color being applied in this type of painting. So it depicts both the cloud and the road. There is no clear boundaries between the cloud and the city, so they are actually transforming into each other, give you this sense that it is a floating world. Even though there are a lot of buildings are depicted on this screen, you will feel like they're all very rootless and they're all very light and airy, because the visual strategy of the use of the gold. And here I like to talk about a brief history of printmaking in Japan. So, with the exchanges facilitated by the Japanese envoys to Tang Dynasty China, there is a large number of woodblock printed Buddhist scriptures from the Tang Dynasty. They were introduced to Japan. The origins of Japanese woodblock printing can also be traced back to Buddhist woodblock prints. Then the Song dynasty, it was a period of significant development for woodblock printing in China. And due to the frequent exchanges between China and Japan, there is a steady influx of high quality Song dynasty woodblock prints entered Japan. As a result, after the mid Heian period, as Japanese monks traveled to Song Dynasty China, Japanese woodblock printing began to advance rapidly. Until the late Muromachi period, Japanese woodblock printing was primarily focused on the publication of Buddhist texts, with activity concentrated in the Kyoto and Nara regions. And ukiyo-e as a cultural commodity driven by publishers is closely related to the flourishing of the Edo publishing industry. In the early Edo period, most publications were produced using the methods of woodblock printing. To meet market demand, Edo publishers directly reproduced various picture books and painting manuals from China. As a result, the Edo publishing industry was greatly influenced by the Ming Dynasty and the Qing Dynasty and their woodblock prints. So at the time, secular novels were particularly popular, and mass market books with accompanying illustrations were especially well received. And compared to traditional woodblock prints, these prints featured a more free spirited and lively style, with more distinct character portrayals. At the same time, erotic books depicting stories of courtesans were also published in large quantities. At the beginning of the 17th century, illustrated woodblock prints from the Ming Dynasty, imported through Nagasaki, they were the main factor that stimulated the development and flourishing of Japanese woodblock printing. The maturity of Ming Dynasty woodblock prints preceded the rise of Edo period prints by over a century. And when these prints, with their smooth lines and exquisite carving techniques, arrived at Nagasaki port as part of the trading goods, they undoubtedly became the best models for Japanese artists. At that time, Edo was a bustling metropolis with a population of over 1 million. And compared to the cultural capital of Kyoto and the economic center of Osaka, the newly emerging city of Edo carried a subtle sense of inferiority. However, as a new city, it had no traditional burdens, and with the influx of talent from across the country, Edo started to have a relaxed and vibrant energy in artistic creation, with the arrival of large numbers of lower ranking samurai, the warrior class, and workers from various trades, merchants, and laborers from rural areas. Following the Tokugawa shogunate, Edo's red light district, known as Akusho, the pleasure quarters, it also experienced an a sense of prosperity. And though these newcomers, they were often unrefined and of lower educational backgrounds, they were full of vitality, which further boosted the already thriving publishing industry. And to meet the reading needs of the lower classes, there are various bookstores. I would call them bookstores. They specialized in different publications, and this kind of bookstores emerged. By that time in Edo, there is a very famous pleasure district known as Yoshiwara. It is established in 1617 under the Tokugawa shogunate as a government sanctioned area for legal prostitution. Located in the northeastern part of Edo, Yoshiwara was originally isolated from the main city, surrounded by moats and walls, creating a physically and culturally distinct environment. And over the centuries, Yoshiwara evolved into more than just a red light district. It became a central hub of Edo period entertainment, fashion, and urban culture. And over the course of 100 years, Yoshiwara transformed into the birthplace of Edo popular culture. And the unique concept known as Iki, it originally described the etiquette men followed when interacting with courtesans in Yoshiwara area. So Yoshiwara was both an isolated paradise and a utopia where dreams came true. Its biggest difference from typical red light districts lay in the concept of Iki, which is known as simulated marriage, where all the procedures mirrored real life, intertwining both false and genuine emotions. So the rules were very intricate and polite. So typically, the interaction followed a three-step process: first meeting, intimate visits, and familiarization, and each step being time consuming. So both parties maintained a composed, proud, and refined manner, completely devoid of vulgarity associated with typical prostitution or flesh trade. So failing to do so was considered lacking iki. So iki could be understood as having elegance, refinement, and a sense of humor. And it later expanded to embody the qualities of character and aesthetic awareness that the people of Edo came to admire. Courtesans were not only entertainers but also trendsetters, influencing fashion, art, and literature. And kabuki theater performances and the creation of ukiyo-e often depicted Yoshiwara scenes and courtesans, further embedding the district into the popular culture of the time. Yoshiwara featured prominently in ukiyo-e prints, which captured the glamorous world of courtesans, festivals, and the vibrant nightlife of Edo. And the artists depicted Yoshiwara courtesans in intricate detail, highlighting both their beauty and the performative nature of their interaction. Here we have a painting by Hishikawa Moronobu, who is often considered the founding father of ukiyo-e and is one of the most influential artists in Japanese art history. And he was instrumental in developing and popularizing ukiyo-e as a distinct genre, moving the art form away from its earlier association with hand painted works and establishing it as widely accessible, mass produced medium. And the work here portrays a woman dressed in a kimono with her head turned over her shoulder, glancing back at something behind her. And this simple but graceful gesture captures a fleeting moment, a characteristic often emphasized in ukiyo-e works, where the ephemeral beauty of the floating world is central. So beauty looking back It is not just a representation of physical beauty, it also reflects the rising prominence of urban culture and the tastes of the merchant class in Edo period Japan. And this type of painting is known as bijinga, the beauty portraits. They are one of the most important subjects in ukiyo-e, and these portraits can be divided into two major phases: the early Edo period and the period following the mid-Edo. And in the early Edo period, Bijinga focused on depicting the vitality of life through representations of everyday customs. And after the mid-Edo period, these works gradually became more stylized, often exhibiting a certain seductive allure. And ukiyo-e beauty portraits represent an idealized world created through the artist's idealized forms. And in general, if one disregards the differences in higher style, clothing, and poses, the figures appear almost uniform, always formulaic, lacking individuality, representing not a specific person, but a type of person. Since pleasure and enjoyment is the central topic of ukiyo-e during the Edo period, almost all ukiyo-e artists made shunga at some point in their careers. So shunga in Chinese is called chunhua. It is a Japanese term for erotic art, and most shunga are a type of ukiyo-e and usually executed in woodblock print format. And translated literally, the Japanese word shunga means picture of spring. And of course, spring is a common expression for sex in most East Asian cultures. And courtesans and geisha, they were common subjects for shunga. But their presence seems to be for the fulfillment of male fantasy rather than for the promotion of the women's career. And there is argument that shunga was read by men and women due to examples in shunga where couples are shown reading shunga together for the purpose of sexual stimulation. And shunga often exaggerates physical features, particularly genitalia, for both comedic and dramatic effect. While highly explicit, the depiction of sex in shunga was not solely about arousal. Um, it often carried elements of humor and satire, poking fun at societal norms or exploring the absurdity of sexual encounters. And artists employed strong lines and bold, vibrant colors typical of ukiyo-e, focusing on detailed fabrics and intimate environments rather than on the detailed depiction of the human body. The compositions could range from straightforward scenes of sexual encounters to more narrative driven illustrations, evolving fantasy, myth, and satire. And shunga was often gifted between lovers or even between married couples, serving as a private form of erotic enjoyment. It was also accessible to women, particularly those in urban settings, where it might be enjoyed or shared among female groups. The only thing that did inhibit the growth of shunga was censorship. And shunga suffered under censorship during the Edo period as the Tokugawa shogunate saw it as a threat to public morality. And censorship continues to be an issue for the study of shunga today, as Japanese censorship laws still prohibits the realistic depiction of genitalia. Therefore, most of the present studies of shunga have been made by Western scholars, and there weren't any publishing records kept which document the rise of shunga. As many publishers, they kept their operation a secret to avoid being caught by the authorities. And for this reason, many works of shunga weren't even signed by the artist that created them. While most shunga were heterosexual, many depicted male on male images, and women on women images were less common, but there are extant works depicting this. Masturbation was also depicted, and the mainstream perception of sexuality kind of drifted in Edo period from that in the modern Western world, and people were seemingly less likely to associate it with one particular sexual preference during the Edo period in Japan. And homosexual shunga, known as wakashue, it was an important subgenre of shunga that depicted same-sex erotic relationships, particularly those between men and adolescent boys. Homosexual relationships, particularly between older men and younger boys, were culturally accepted and even celebrated in the samurai and theater worlds during the Edo period. And these dynamics were reflected in shunga for sure. And one thing I want to mention is the figurative representation of the nude in East Asian art. And here we have this like female on female images, but you would find most paintings of nudity in the realm of traditional Chinese and Japanese art. They did not favor realism. So here we see the two naked bodies. They look like a heap of bags in this painting, and the figures lost or consistency, and the bodies are kind of formless. There's no realistic depiction, or there's no attention paid on the volume or the flashy quality of the muscles. They are clearly not anatomically accurate, and there is no modeling, and the flesh is colorless. So the bodies are flat, while the erotic element emanates only or mostly from the atmosphere of the setting of the whole environment, the background. The nude actually holds no actual interests. Another interesting thing that worth your attention is in some cases, shunga actually gives you expression of gender fluidity. For some wakashue in particular, they were often shown with features that blurred the lines between male and female. And in some cases, you can't even tell the difference from their facial features because the male and the male share identical facial expressions. And you can only tell the difference of sexes by your judgment of their clothing and the genitalia. So the aesthetic fluidity in these depictions can reflect a broader cultural openness to gender expressions that transcended binary norms in Edo Japan. Here we have a very well-known shunga by Katsushika Hokusai. It is The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife. It is an example of shunga that addressed both sexes as it appears to celebrate female sexuality rather than simply creating an image for male fantasy. So Hokusai, best known for his landscapes like the Great Wave of Kanagawa, ventured into shunga with works like this, which reflects the diversity and complexity of Edo period art. The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife. It depicts a dramatic and surreal scene of a woman, often interpreted as an ama, A-M-A, which is a Japanese word for a traditional female diver in Japanese culture. So it is a depiction of an ama in an intimate encounter with two octopus. The larger octopus is seen enveloping the woman, its tentacles wrapped around her body, while the smaller octopus is shown near her face. And the octopuses, as non human creatures, bring a surreal and transgressive quality to the image, which pushes the boundaries of conventional erotic art. The print also draws on Japanese mythology and folklore, where sea creatures, including octopuses, often had mystical or supernatural associations. And the theme of a woman and an octopus has been linked to various ancient legends, including the tale of Princess Tamatori, an ama who dives to recover a stolen jewel from a dragon king. Then she encountered sea creatures in this process. The woman's body language suggests that she is not in any kind of distress. In fact, it appears that she is enjoying herself. There are actually some early interpretations of the image by Western collectors and scholars such as Jack Holler and Richard Ling. They kind of believed that this was a rape scene, but they don't really understand Japanese language, so they can misinterpret it as a rape scene. The dialogue presented in the background text, the calligraphy, it expresses this is a mutual sexual enjoyment of the women and the octopus. And the image is often cited as a forerunner of tentacle erotica, which is a motif that has been common in modern Japanese animation and manga since the late 20th century. Here we have another artist whose name is Kitagawa Utamaro, and he was one of the most well-known artists of the ukiyo-e genre during the Edo period, renowned for his portraits of women, the concept of bijinga. So Utamaro is best known for his portrayals of women from the pleasure quarters, particularly those from the famous Yoshiwara district in Edo. His unique or innovative approach to bijinga moved beyond merely representing physical beauty. He portrayed a wide range of female emotions, moods, and psychological states, capturing their subtle expressions in ways that few artists had attempted before. And his women were often depicted in domestic settings or in moments of very quiet reflection, revealing an intimacy not often seen in earlier works of ukiyo-e. So he invented this particular genre known as okubie, the large head portraits. So one of Utamaro's most notable contributions to ukiyo-e was his use of okubie, or large head portraits, which focused on the head and upper torso of the subject. And this compositional choice allowed him to explore the intricacies of facial expressions in greater detail. And here we have one of his most well-known painting, The Three Beauties of the Present Day. It is one of the most famous works by Kitagawa Utamaro, created around 1793. In this printing, Utamaro meticulously renders the women's hairstyles and the fabric of their kimonos, reflecting the fashion of the time. The attention to these details, especially the subtle patterns and textures of their clothing, demonstrates Utamaro's skill in depicting the aesthetics of Edo period beauty. The three women, though beautiful and fashionable, they actually represent different roles in the society of Yoshiwara: the courtesan, the geisha, and the tea house worker, each reflecting a different aspect of the Edo pleasure districts. During the Edo period, kabuki was one of the main forms of entertainment in urban life. In major cities such as Edo, Osaka, and Kyoto, almost every kabuki troupe performed in a specific location. The rising popularity of the performances contributed to the development of related types of prints. So, on one hand, there were prints with unique styles related to the performances, such as posters, schedules, and programs with explanatory texts. On the other hand, prints depicting the appearance of the actors themselves were also highly popular. And similar to Bijinga, the beauty portraits, which depicts courtesans and geishas, kabuki actors also became a popular theme for Japanese woodblock prints. But for the early stage, from the establishment of kabuki to the genre paintings of the early modern periods, most prints related to kabuki actors, um, most of them, they depicted stage scenes. However, as the performances developed and there was more focus on acting skills, public attention gradually shifted to the individual images of actor. So yakushae, actor prints, gradually became the primary form of kabuki-related woodblock prints, and the audience was not only interested in the actors' portrayals of various characters, but also in their backstage lives and everyday appearance. And yakushae depicting the popular idols of the kabuki world alongside the beauty portraits became a widely appreciated form of popular art that appealed to both the young and old and to both refined and common tastes. And here we have probably one of the most well-known yakushae in the history of Japanese woodblock print by the artist whose name is Toshusai Sharaku. And he was one of the most enigmatic and celebrated ukiyo-e artists of the Edo period. Known primarily for his bold and dramatic portraits of kabuki actors, again, a genre known as yakushae. He's only active for only a very short period, from 1794 to 1795, just 2 years. But he actually created a very distinctive body of work that broke away from the idealized representation, which are like common in ukiyo-e. He offered a more intense and expressive approach to portraiture. Actually, very little is known about Sharaku's life, and his true identity remains one of the great mysteries of Japanese art. And some scholars believe he might have been a kabuki actor himself or had close ties to the theater, while others speculate that he could have been a pseudonym used by another established artist. His very short, explosive career lasted less than a year, producing approximately 140 prints. After that, he mysteriously disappeared from the art world. But his yakushae, the actor prints, are noted for um, their like psychological depths and expressiveness. And Sharaku's mastery and the uniqueness of his art lies in his ability to capture the essence of the kabuki performance, which delivers not just the physical likeness of the actor, but the emotional intensity and personality of the character that the actor played. So the print here, it is notable for the minimal background, placing all emphasis on the character's facial expression and his gesture. The bold use of lines and the sharp contrast between the actor's pale face and his dark costume can enhances the dramatic effect, making the emotions more obvious to the viewer. Unlike the graceful and often idealized ukiyo-e portraits of the time, Sharaku's prints are striking for a sense of raw intensity, which captures the emotions and inner states of the kabuki actor he depicted. So this work is titled Otani Oniji Third as the Servant Edobai. It is one of the most famous and iconic work by Toshusai Sharaku, which is created in 1794. So the actor's face is contorted with a sinister expression, and his eyes wide with malice, and his brows furrowed in concentration. And this raw portrayal of emotion can highlight Sharaku's departure from the idealized, graceful depiction that were common in most ukiyo-e prints at the time. And in here, I'd like to explain a little bit about the title of the work. So, Otani Oniji, it is actually a stage name passed down through generations of kabuki actors. And in the play, the character he portrays, the actor portrays, is Edobai, which is who is a thief who seizes opportunity to steal. And the term yako refers both to a servant of a samurai family and more generally to a man. But in this case, Edobai is not a samurai servant. The scene depicted here shows Edobai tasked with robbing someone at Shijo Kawara in Kyoto, expressing shock when the intended victim draws a sword in self-defense. So Toshusai Sharaku exaggerated both the actor's physical features and personality traits using the multi-layered woodblock printing technique around the eyes and mouth to emphasize the character's expression. The highly arched eyebrows, rolled back eyes, tightly closed lips, and slightly open mouths they're all quite remarkable, especially the fearful gaze and tense hands. Though the outstretched fingers are not anatomically proportional, they appear as powerful as lightning, radiating an evil energy. This is the most striking aspect of the work. During the late Edo period, the popularity of travel among the common people continued to rise, which gives birth to numerous ukiyo-e series with themes of landscape. So there are two words. One is maisho, which means famous place, and another is kaido, which means is roads. So in Japanese, meisho refers to uh, scenic spots or famous sites, and kaido means roads. And meisho-e and kaido-e, they are paintings depicting these famous sites and the landscapes along the major roads leading from Edo to other regions. The 1830s marked the maturation of ukiyo-e landscape prints, coinciding with a surge in domestic travel among the common people. So the increasingly wealthy residents of Edo enjoyed considerable freedom to travel within Japan. Transportation routes and accommodation facilities along the way became increasingly developed. After the 18th century, even remote mountain valleys and isolated islands were connected by roads or by boats. So, as Bijinga, the beauty portraits and kabuki actor prints declined in popularity, landscape prints became the final grand celebration of the vibrant popular art form of ukiyo-e. At the same time, as the era changed, art from the West and China began to have a more direct influence on ukiyo-e landscape prints. So here we have the very well-known um, woodblock print by Katsushika Hokusai, The Great Wave of Kanagawa. And Katsushika Hokusai kind of reached the pinnacle of his artistic career in the 1830s when he was over 70 years old. And it was during this period that he produced his most remarkable landscape print series titled 36 Views of Mount Fuji, which took him 5 years to complete. And his approach of depicting the same subject from different locations, angles, times, and seasons expanded a new realm in ukiyo-e landscape art. And since ancient times, the Japanese have held an almost religious reverence for Mount Fuji. And in the Middle Edo period, there is a quasi religious organization known as Fujiko emerged, with followers frequently organizing pilgrimage climbs of Mount Fuji, which also had elements of travel and sightseeing in these pilgrimage trips as well. So clearly, this sentiment influenced Katsushika Hokusai, as many of his works took Mount Fuji as their subject. And the work, The Great Wave of Kanagawa, from this series is world renowned. From this vantage point offered by Katsushika, we can see a distant view of Mount Fuji. The scene depicts three cargo boats which were used to transport fresh fish and vegetables from the Boso Peninsula near Edo to the Nihonbashi market in Edo, supplying the city's residents, and each boat is manned by 8 rowers. The sea is raging, and at the moment the waves break, the boatmen tightly cling to the boats, riding the waves. Visually, the rolling spray of the waves guides the viewer's gaze, ensuring that the majestic presence of Mount Fuji, situated at the lower edge of the image, remains undiminished. This is another well-known print from the same series. And Hokusai's original woodblock print depicts this landscape scene where a sudden gust of wind causes papers to fly into the air, creating a very dynamic moment of disorder in an otherwise tranquil rural setting with the background of Mount Fuji. And the print is emblematic of Hokusai's ability to capture natural elements like wind, water, and light in vivid and fluid motion. And this print also becomes inspiration for, I don't know if you have ever heard of the name, the Canadian contemporary artist Jeff Wall, for his photo reinterpretation. And in this contemporary artwork, Jeff Wall transforms this moment into a hyperreal cinematic photo. And in his version, four figures are caught in the wind on a modern landscape, with the papers dramatically scattered into the air. The setting is no longer rural Japan, but a nondescript, industrialized field which modernizes and globalizes the scene, removing it from its specific cultural context. And this transformation reflects Wall's engagement with both art history and contemporary life. So, and the title of this photo work is also very interesting. It is titled "A Sudden Gust of Wind After Hokusai." So it is this large color photograph displayed in the light box. It depicts this flat, open landscape in which four foreground figures are frozen as they respond to this sudden gust of wind. And Wall photographed actors in the landscape located outside of his hometown, Vancouver. And the result is this tableau photo, this arranged tableau photo, which appears staged in the manner of a classical Japanese woodblock print. And by referencing Hokusai, Wall places his work in dialogue with traditional art forms while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of photo as a media. And his use of digital manipulation also reflects on the ways modern technology can alter and construct its sense of reality, which is a theme that resonates in our increasingly media saturated world. So, other than Hokusai, there is another quite important ukiyo-e artists regarding landscape prints, and he is Utagawa Hiroshige. And he was one of the most renowned ukiyo-e artists of the Edo period regarding his like masterful landscape prints and depictions of everyday life. And Hiroshige was born in Edo to a family of low-ranking fairmen, and his original name was Ando Tokutaro. At the age of 14, he began training under Utagawa Toyohiro, who is a prominent ukiyo-e master. And initially, Hiroshige created prints of traditional subjects such as actors and beautiful women, but he soon shifted his focus to landscapes, where he found his true artistic calling. And he created this series of landscape woodblock prints known as the 53 Stations of the Tokaido. And this series is perhaps Hiroshige's most famous work. And Tokaido, literally in English, it means Eastern Sea Road. So it was the most significant road connecting Edo with Kyoto. So Edo is the seat of the Tokugawa shogunate, and Kyoto is the imperial capital. So these two cities are very important in Edo, Japan, which makes the route from Edo to Kyoto important. Established during the early Edo period, this route facilitated trade, communication, and travel. It became particularly popular with daimyos, and daimyos is a Japanese word for feudal lords. But also, it is popular with merchants and pilgrims, all of whom traveled along it for both official duties and leisure. and the road stretched approximately 500 kilometers and was dotted with 53 official post stations where travelers could rest, eat, and find accommodations. These stations became bustling hubs of activity, each with its own unique charm and identity. The theories of the 53 stations of the Tokaido depicts the journey along this famous road, highlighting the beauty of the landscape, the variety of people encountered, and the essence of life in the Edo period. The theories became immensely popular and solidified Hiroshige's reputation as a landscape artist. And one of Hiroshige's trademarks was his ability to evoke the changing seasons, often depicting scenes of rain, snow, and mist. And his works captured the fleeting beauty of nature in line with the Japanese aesthetic of mono no aware, which is the awareness of the impermanence of things. And Hiroshige employed various techniques in his composition to create an emotional atmosphere regarding different weathers and seasons. So, in this particular print titled Shono Rainstorm, he depicted slanted rain like shuttle threads, and the farmers hurriedly move along. Although there is no detailed depiction of the character of the human figure, the overlapping bamboo forests in the background transform into dark shadows, delivers a subtle feeling of melancholy, and the slope, the cold rain, and the bamboo forest together form an unstable triangle in this composition, and further reflecting the anxious psychological state of people in the sudden rainstorm. And this demonstrates Hiroshige's mastery of composition and his ability to evoke emotion through the composition. A similar technique can be appreciated in the snow covered Kameyama, and to evoke the sense of vast, clear, and distant air on a snowy morning. Hiroshige deliberately gave the main elements a distinct directional flow, slanting them towards the upper right corner, and the overall diagonal composition created a strong sense of spatial depth. In terms of color, light blue and pale red are placed at opposite ends of the sky and earth, with the use of gradient techniques, making them correspond and blend seamlessly. The refined composition and the use of simple color together can enhance the depiction of a clear winter sky. And after the Meiji period began, Edo was renamed Tokyo and became Japan's new capital. The decline of Ukiyo toward the end of the 19th century, alongside the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate, was no coincidence. And in the final decade of the shogunate, the changing societal trends began to reshape the aesthetic preference of Edo citizens. So here is a little bit about the history. Before 1852, Japan was isolationist. Contact with the West was limited to trade with the Dutch in the city of Nagasaki. Westerners, otherwise, they weren't allowed in the country. And Western influences were strongly discouraged. In 1853, Matthew Perry of the United States Navy steamed into what we now call Tokyo Bay, and the Japanese told him to leave and go to Nagasaki. And Perry can ignore the requests arriving from the shore that he should move to Nagasaki, the official port for trade with the outside. And he threatened in turn to take his ships directly to Edo and burn the city to the ground if he was not allowed to land. It was eventually agreed upon that he should land nearby at Kurihama, whereupon he delivered his letter and then he left. And the following year, at the Convention of Kanagawa, Perry returned with a fleet of 8 of the fearsome black ships to demonstrate the power of the United States Navy and to lend weight to his announcement that he would not leave again until he had a treaty. And the terms of the treaty were dictated by the Americans, and the Japanese had little choice but to agree, saying that they were seriously technologically outmatched. So this is where modern Japanese history began, and Perry's actions and the signing of treaties widely viewed in Japan as unequal. And this destroyed this image of Japan as a strong country. So the Japanese knew that they had to catch up to the Western powers or else risk getting stomped flat by them, which is what had happened to China already. So it directly leads Japan to the period of Meiji Restoration. So the US Navy forced open Japan's doors after more than 200 years of isolation, and following the Meiji Restoration, the Japanese government adopted a policy of complete westernization, and the wave of modernization profoundly impacted the production of ukiyo-e. Although many ukiyo-e publishers and artists continued their traditional work at the time, Yokohama, which is a city located near Tokyo, became the center of new fashion trends as it was one of the first places to showcase Western civilization. The flood of foreign culture shifted the focus of social and cultural interests, leading to the rise of Yokohama ukiyo-e, also known as civilization prints. So, regarding this particular genre, steam trains, railways, and Western style architecture, products of modern civilization, begin to appear in ukiyo-e. And this opened up new possibilities for the art form, not only in terms of subject matter, but also in the incorporation of Western painting techniques into its production. In the meanwhile, between approximately 1860 and 1910, Japanese arts and crafts, particularly ukiyo-e, had a tremendous influence on Western art. And there is a phenomenon known as Japanism. And the display of Japanese art at the 1867 Paris World Exposition sparked an craze for Japanese aesthetics across Europe. And this was the first time Eastern art directly encountered Western art and had a profound impact on the modernization of Western artistic practices. The use of flat, vibrant colors, delicate and fluid lines, and simple, clear forms stood in contrast to the rationalist based art traditions of the West, which had been established since ancient Greece. At the same time, Paris was brewing a revolution in modern art, and the sensory experiences offered by Japanese aesthetics provided a practical model for artists rebelling against academic traditions. The global modern art movements that emerged from this period displayed clear Japanese influence. And Japanese prints, with their detailed treatment of textiles, clothing, and natural forms, had a significant impact on many European artists. And here I'm actually showing you one example from Gustav Klimt. And Klimt's lavish use of patterns and his emphasis on surface detail reflect this Japanese influence. And his depiction of Adele's dress and the background merges her figure with intricate gold patterns, very similar to how ukiyo-e prints often merged figures with surrounding environments in harmonious ways. The emergence of ukiyo-e marked the first time in Japanese art history that art truly transitioned from the elite class, from the noble class to the common people, reflecting the unique characteristics of the Edo period in both time and place, and expressing the temperament and tastes of the relatively lower classes. So the essence of ukiyo-e lies in its depiction of the desires for life and the personal consciousness of the common people. It draws on a wide array of social subjects, recording universal human nature through its art form. And the citizens of Edo had a strong desire for self expression and appreciation of art. And before the 13th century, Japanese art was primarily focused on Buddhist art. But starting in the Heian period, it began transitioning toward secular art. And this transformation was not only a shift in subject matter from gods, from deities to human, but also a conceptual shift from aspiring toward the afterlife to focusing on the present life. So, as a conclusion, ukiyo-e turned its attention to the lower classes of society, depicting the joys and sorrows of common people, and the progression from um, the worship of deities to the leisure of aristocrats, and finally to the common figures of everybody's real life, signified a fundamental change in the aesthetic orientation of Japanese art. And this shift in economic power prompted the increasingly wealthy commoner class to become a new social force, providing a vast consumer market for the development of ukiyo-e. Another aspect I'd like to briefly talk about is in Japan, incomplete things are revered because they hold the potential for change to allow imagination to freely complete it. So people intentionally keep it in an incomplete state, and that explains why there are so many negative space in Japanese woodblock print and in a lot of Chinese art as well. And this idea also underlies one of ukiyo-e's main characteristics, the partial enlargement technique, in which the main subject is brought extremely close, resulting in parts of the subject being cut off by the frame. So the psychological suggestion of the subject's completeness extends the space of expression beyond the borders of the artwork. And to the Japanese, incomplete forms and imperfect realities are more conducive to conveying spiritual ideas. Through the process of mentally and spiritually completing an incomplete scene, we can more closely approach the essence of the subject's spirit. So that's it for today's lecture. And for the rest of the class, I'd like you to watch this film or TV drama because on its website, the NHK's website, it kind of divided this film into two parts. So episode 1 and episode 2. I'd like you to watch both of them. It is based on the daughter of Katsushika Hokusai, who is also a Japanese woodblock print artist. So far, all the artists' name that I covered in this lecture are male artists, and that's why, like for the rest of the class, I like you to watch this film, which is based on a female artist's life during the Edo period. And the title of this film is Kurara: The Dazzling Life of Hokusai's Daughter. It is a 2017 Japanese TV drama that tells the story of Katsushika Oi, the talented daughter of the famous ukiyo-e artist Katsushika Hokusai. And the film explores Oi's life, her artistic journey, her complex relationship with her father, who is one of Japan's most renowned artists. And the drama portrays both her struggles and triumphs as a female artist in 19th century Japan, a time when female painters were often overshadowed by their male counterparts. And one of the central themes of this film is the role of women in the world of art during the Edo period, which is often being neglected. And Oi's journey is emblematic of the struggles faced by female artists in a male dominated society where women's contributions to art were often overlooked. So please use this question as a starting point for your self reflection based on your viewing experience of this film, and upload your response to the submission portal on Moodle.